Well, it's a chilly and breezy start out there for much of the nation. The rain is moving out in the east and the snow is moving in out west. Will we finally quiet down, or is there another big storm lurking just over the horizon? And what's going on with all this wind? Well, hold on to the ball because the clock is ticking. Cold Rain's weather blitz is coming, and it's coming right now. Hi folks, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Jason Pritchard, and you are here for a new episode of Cold Rain's Weather Blitz. We've got a new set. I'm on a different side of the screen. Hopefully that doesn't throw us off too badly, but the point of this show is to get you up to speed on what you need to know about today's weather and the weather over the next 7 days. I'll still have Cold Rain's Weather World and probably have a new episode of that coming up tomorrow, where we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the mechanics that are driving our weather pattern and maybe take a little bit of a longer lead look, maybe out to two to 3 weeks, and see what's coming up over the next 2 to 4 weeks or so. So we'll get into all of that, but we're going to start here with the satellite picture. Again, thank you for being here. If you have any questions, leave those in the comments section. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and it'll keep us growing and allow us to reach more people. So thanks again for being here. We're going to start with our satellite pictures. We usually do, and you can see out here in the east, our big storm system that affected much of the country is now well up into Canada. Cold front still offshore, partially through the northern New England states here, and so we've got a stream of moisture coming in off the Atlantic, and you folks up here in northern New England around Maine are still experiencing some fairly heavy rain. A little wave has developed along that front, and it's going to continue to pull moisture in through the day, so I would expect rain to continue there. Low clouds out here over the Midwest, working through the Southeast. It's a partly cloudy day here in Morganton. The winds are still howling. We've got a lot of wind energy with this storm. And then coming into the west, we've had another system work on into the Great Basin, and now that is working into the Rockies and into the Central Plains. And so we're going to see some snow and some rain in these areas, and other little systems coming into California. If we take a look at our radar imagery, we can see what's going on here. That snow that I was talking about, it's spread up into the Rockies. The higher peaks are actually going to pick up a foot or more of snow. Some parts of the higher elevations can actually see up to 3 feet. Out in here in Wyoming over to Kansas and Nebraska, you guys are going to see some snow. Some winter storm warnings are up here. And if we take a look at here, let's go back to the radar for a second. Meant to show you over here in New England. So this is where our rain is pulling out. So that should work out of the picture as the day goes on. And then if we look at our hazards map, this is a little quieter over in the east than we saw yesterday. Certainly still some wind advisories up, some high wind warnings in spots, particularly along the higher elevations. And then down here in Georgia, we've got frost advisories and freeze warnings up. So it's going to get chilly tonight. Chilly behind this is bringing a lot of cold air advection across the nation. So it's going to chill. It's going to cool down a little bit. Red flag warnings where it's really dry, and we can see hazardous fire conditions, critical fire behavior down here in Florida, and also over in Texas and New Mexico. More dust is going to get kicked up with strong southwesterly winds. High wind warnings and red flag warnings are up, so do not burn in these areas. This will result in critical fire behavior. It will spread, wildfires will spread rapidly. It'll be difficult to contain with the strong winds. You could gust to 60 to 65 miles per hour in these locations. So be very, very careful here not to allow any sort of ignition of any materials outside. Winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings are up in parts of Nevada, Wyoming, into Nebraska, and then back in through the Rockies. We'll see, as I said, snow and some rain in the lower valley areas. Now, taking a look at our Atari map, this is one thing that you get at Cold Rain's Weather Channel that you don't get on other channels, the Atari map. This is National Weather Service. I like these graphics. They look old school. You've got that big system up here in Canada, leaving and moving rapidly out to the east, that trailing cold front I was mentioning. So you can see a little mixed precipitation. Mostly this is rain, and most of this is moving out. Rain over through Boston and Rhode Island and places up in there. And then you've got snow out here in the Rockies that we looked at, heavy snow where the hatched areas are, and then some wind and critical fire behavior out here as we talked about before. So that's your Atari map. Now, if we switch over here and look at our current temperatures, we're seeing really cold air up in Canada. A lot of this cold is being dragged down into the States, so a lot of areas below freezing. This blue line represents that. And then 40s and 50s across the South, still 40s and upper 40s and even 50s in New England on southwesterly winds coming in behind that system. Now, this will all change over. We'll get a wind shift. Winds will flip out of the northwest, and you guys will cool down up here. Great Lakes areas are going to see lake effect snows as the winds change direction. And so it's going to be chilly for a couple of days, but then well into next week, we're going to see a big warm up over much of the nation. Dew points are very, very dry. This is leading to those red flag warnings where you have high winds, dry conditions. Look at this, dew points in the teens and 20s over New Mexico, really 20s and 30s over much of the nation. So it's a very dry air mass that is worked in. You're going to see those dew points creep up out here where there's more humidity with the systems coming in from California. And here's a look at those winds. We'll go back to our other display here. And you can see those winds just really cranking, and you've got southerly winds flowing all up in here, gusting to 43 up in Amarillo, 36 in Odessa, Albuquerque to 26. Where you see these oranges, you're seeing gusts around 50 miles per hour. And again, over here in the mountains, you've got some upslope snow that's occurring in some of these areas with strong west-northwesterly winds, and you can see those higher gusts in the mountains. And as that storm system pulls away up here in the northeast, winds will settle down there too. Strong winds coming in again over the lake. So windy, windy, windy. And there's just a lot of pressure differential. You've got high pressure ridging out here over Mexico in the southwest, and you've got a low pressure that's developed here. It's working through the mountain west that's going to move into the plains. That big, strong low pressure here. High winds go from high pressure to low pressure, and so the stronger the low pressure is and the stronger the high pressure is, and how close they are to each other will determine how strong the wind gradient is. And so we've seen a lot of strong winds because we've got a lot of strong low pressure systems that have developed. Taking a look at our surface map, you're seeing that big low pressure system move on off into Canada, and it's going to rapidly move out into the Atlantic. We've got another system that we looked at on the hazards map for all of those warnings out here. You're seeing this system move out of Wyoming into the Central Plains, bringing with it snow. And some of areas of Nebraska and Kansas could pick up as much as 6 to 10 inches of snow. Higher snows back in the higher elevations, up to 1 to 2 feet. Back here, rain in the valleys. As we go on out into Friday, that system weakens and moves off to the east. A little light precipitation over the lower Great Lakes. That's going to continue to weaken. It's going to actually spawn a little area of low pressure as this system moves in here too off the southeast coast as we get through the weekend. So that system moves out of the southwest, brings some light precipitation, not a lot of activity, maybe a couple of rumbles of thunder down here along the Gulf of Cold Rain, the coast here, and you're going to see the system move out of Texas, Louisiana, and propagate over to the southeast. This is Saturday afternoon. Sunday afternoon, that's over Florida, so high clouds over the southeast. Not a washout by any stretch of the imagination. Scattered showers, maybe a little more steady rain as you get into northern Florida. Another system approaching the coast, some lake effect snow, little spokes of energy moving here, little clippers moving in. It's going to bring some snow up here into the north. And then across, as we get into Monday afternoon, a low pressure system starts to develop off the south. It's not going to wind up and go up the coast. It's just going to move on out into the Atlantic and not really do much, bring much sensible weather along the southeast coast. But we've got a couple of other systems that are starting to move in. One moving in up here into southwest Canada, and then another one moving into California that's going to bring some rain out there. And you can see that spreads on in, some showers moving into the Intermountain West and some snow up in the higher elevations. That system in the southeast, see, I told you it's just going to move right off to the south and east and not really affect us very much other than the coastal areas. And then we get on into Wednesday, we see another big system that's starting to impact the West Coast. There are signs that some of these, the atmospheric river that we dealt with a while back is going to re-emerge for the West Coast. So active pattern continues, a lot of energy in the jet, and that'll translate into the central part of the country eventually. And will it spin up another storm? Well, that question is to be determined. We'll look at it really quick at the end and see what might be over the horizon. So what about our high temperatures for the week? How's that going to shake out? Well, this afternoon we're looking at 30s and 20s and 30s up in the Great Lakes area, and really 40s northeast down to the southeast, you're really starting to get 50s and 60s and 70s along the Gulf Coast. But through the center of the country, we're looking at predominantly 30s and 40s, a little colder in the the upper peaks of the Rocky Mountains out here, where you get into the teens and 20s with snow, heavy snow at times. And then tomorrow afternoon, Friday afternoon, still same kind of a footprint, cool across the northern tier. That cold air, as I said earlier, is working into Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and so you guys in the upper New England areas are going to be below freezing tomorrow for the highs. 40s, 30s, and 40s across much of the northern half of the country. We start to get a little bit of a return flow behind this system as it moves on through, or ahead of the system as it moves through the south. On Friday afternoon, we're getting 80s and 70s and 60s well up into Missouri and Illinois. Saturday, looking at that cooling back as that system moves through. We've got some clouds. We've got a little northwest flow behind it. You're going to dip back into the 50s and into Texas, into Tennessee. 40s and 30s up across the northern or the central part of the country. And then even some warmer air has worked in from the Pacific up here in the northern tier. So where you normally expect it to be cold, it's actually mild. So much above normal here, and then below freezing in the New England and the northeastern areas. That won't last long, but it will feel like a change compared to today. Now, that's pulling out, as you can see, as we get into Sunday, that cold air is pulling out, mild for much of the country, well above normal in a lot of these areas, 60s all the way up into Montana, 60s and 70s along the Gulf Coast, 50s for pretty much everybody else. So it's going to be a mild period that's coming up. Really, we get into that on Monday afternoon. Look at the 70s all the way up into Nebraska, 60s as far as the Canadian border. A little chillier out west, a little chillier in the northeast. And then that mild air just continues to spread on east as we go through the week. So Tuesday afternoon, everybody's basking in warmth. It could even get a little warmer than that in the south. So maybe even close to the south, close to where I'm at, we could, in Morganton, North Carolina, we could get up into the upper 70s, maybe even close to 80, a little cooler out west. And then we've got some hints of another system moving into the west that could be a weather maker for much of the nation. We're going to wrap up our last segment with a few miscellaneous items. We'll take a quick peek ahead and then a little sneak peek at maybe what turns out to be an important weather maker as we get on into the latter portion of next week. We're going to start with the important weather maker that is just really exiting the Northeast and affected so many people yesterday and over the last couple of days. These are the storm reports yesterday. So as that line sort of moved on into the east here into the Carolinas, it started to feel a little bit of the effects of the afternoon heating and those higher dew points that were sort of surging in off of the Atlantic, and it intensified. And there were quite a number of wind reports. We had trees down and objects blown around, some power outages, even a little tornado report down here east of Charlotte, and a hail report looks like on Cape Hatteras. So all of that has moved on out, but really, thankfully, we didn't have a lot of instability to work with, or we would have had a major tornado outbreak really across the entire South. There was just so much wind energy. But you often see that in March and in the spring, where you have these, and even in the winter too, where you see these low instability but high shear type environments. That's what we were in, and we certainly saw that play out. It did not produce a lot of tornadoes, thank goodness. If we'd had high instability, we would have been talking, singing a different song today, I'm telling you. Now, the Storm Prediction Center doesn't really show anything over the next 8 days or so in the way of organized severe weather. This is really the only thing of note. It's the day 3 look from Saturday to Sunday. Marginal risk down here where you could see 1 or 2 severe storms pop up in advance of that little low that was swinging across, that we showed earlier, swinging across the south. Just general activity here in the green, but no other organized severe weather to speak of, which is good. We can use the break. Precipitation outlook from the Weather Prediction Center. Highest precipitation amount is really going to be along the southern tier. We could see a quarter to half to as much as an inch or even 2 across Florida, where it's, where they're expecting a little bit more in the way of training, and here in the Panhandle and the northern portions of Florida. But really, most of the other countries, high and dry. Got a couple of little light systems that'll move over in the next 5 days or so. But the other system is the one that's moving out of the Rockies into the plains. It'll weaken as it does so, bringing some heavy snow back here to the west, and then toward the east into the lakes up into the northeast. Not going to see a lot of activity. Maybe a few clippers come in and drop some light snow across the northern sections of New England, and some lake effect snows as the winds turn out of the northwest. Now, our temperature map, I agree with this. I've looked at the data this morning, and this is what I would draw if I was drawing a temperature map. Probabilities highest in the east, and the south. So we're looking at a big swath of red out here and into the Tennessee and Ohio valleys, even along the immediate coast here. Much of Virginia, North Carolina, looking at well above temperature. We can see temperatures running in this mid 70s, upper 70s, even 80 in some of these areas. And then back into the southwest, California, Nevada, Arizona, your highest probabilities for below normal, even much of the western fourth of the country or fifth of the country here, high probabilities for below normal. A lot of clouds and rain keeping that area, helping to keep it below normal. And you can see that reflected here. So above normal precipitation, much above here across the northern tiers, those systems kind of swing and weaken as they go east. Higher probabilities for above normal precipitation north. And then down in Texas, very, very dry here. So probably going to see more dust blown around. You're going to see critical fire conditions develop as the air is dry. We're not getting precipitation. There's wind blowing. So be very careful down here about burning over the next, 5 to 10 days. I like this map, except as we get out into the later part of the the 7, 8, 9, 10 day period, there's confidence that's starting to grow for a storm here. So we're going to watch that carefully as we get on into the period. Now, looking at our snowfall probabilities, I agree with this as well. Some of this area is not going to see snow, but this is probabilities for an inch or more of snow, 90 to 100% where you see these areas and shaded in red. And I agree with that. I think we're going to see a lot of snow here. It kind of tapers off as you move east. Some of this on the southern tier is probably going to be rain. And then clippers are going to bring, an inch or two of snow across the northern New England into the lakes. You're going to see the lake effect snow machine kick up at times. And now I'm going to show you something that you don't get on other channels. You probably won't see this anywhere else. This is the European ensemble mean. Now remember, the ensemble mean for the European model has 51 members. They're all run the same, but with initial conditions tweaked slightly. So same cycle of a run, but the initial conditions are tweaked, and we do that to see if there are any large variations out in the short term, medium term, long term. And so what this map is showing you is the confidence that the model has across all of its 51 members of where a storm system might be. So probabilities of pressure at a point being lower than 1,000 millibars, that would represent a low pressure. So where you're seeing these 90 to 100%, this red, this is 90 to 100% probability that the model thinks that there's going to be a low pressure here of some strength. And as you go away from this particular point, and this is at 210 hours out, so this is about 9 days out, a little bit less than that. Confidence is a little less, but in any event, the takeaway from this map is that the European ensemble, and the GFS thinks this too, there's going to be a low pressure system here. But how strong will it be? This map gives us a clue. This is a spaghetti plot. So instead of just one big blob of colors, it's showing you each member and where it thinks the low pressure will be and how strong it thinks it will be. And so these gray colors represent pressures from 990 to 1,000 millibars. 980 to 990 millibars represented here by these greens. And then these blues, there's a non-trivial amount of blues here that show us that where the model is thinking pressures from 970 to 980 millibars. That's strong, folks. That's kind of where we were with this last one. Even some of these are even lower than that pressure-wise. That's intense. And so if we look at the actual European model, let's go here. Look at the actual European model forecast for that time period. So 210 hours out, that's next Friday. So we're looking at late next week, early next weekend. It's got a low pressure in here in South Dakota and Nebraska moving out with heavy snow behind it again and a line of storms moving out ahead of it. Look at that. It's strengthened to 979 by Saturday morning, early Saturday morning with heavy snow breaking out here. And that just goes on off. Line of storms here. So this looks very similar to what we just went through. The GFS kind of agrees too. If we look at the GFS at 210, 975 already with big snows, big rains, nothing out ahead of it. That's ridiculous. That will change. And you can see the next frame that already starts to put a line of storms together. So not a forecast, but there's something that we're going to watch. And we'll dig in more on our Cold Rains Weather World episode that we'll have out tomorrow. We'll do our trivia question. We'll have a couple of little fun segments in there that you won't want to miss as well. Be a little bit of a longer show than today, but that is it for today. I'll be posting on Twitter throughout the day, and certainly as events change with this system over the course of the next couple of weeks, I'll have posts there at Real Cold Rain. Don't forget to leave a comment, prayer request, if there's something I can pray for you about. Happy to do that. and leave a question for me about the show or about the weather. Happy to answer that as well. Give the video a like, share it with friends. We want to grow the community, and the only way we can do that is if you subscribe to the channel, share it, like it, and interact with it. And hopefully it's valuable to you and you've learned a little bit today and are now better prepared for the week ahead. So take care, everybody. Hope you have a great afternoon, and we'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.